thank everybody for coming. I'm glad everybody's here. Everybody look around and look at the industry that's standing here before to come and greet this man and say farewell to him. I mean, this is it, guys. This is the backbone of our industry. And I think you'd be proud to see each and every one of you here. So, I had a very wise man tell me one time that sometimes memories come out of my eyes and they roll down my cheek. And here lately, there's been quite a bit of that. And I'm not a speech giver, but I'm going to do the best I can. And if you all bear with me, we'll get started. Before we get going, I'm going to tell one of my funniest stories with Carl on all of our travels. We had been on the road a couple weeks, and we flew this time, and we went to Washington State. And looked and looked and looked and couldn't find anything, so we rent a car and we're driving down through California. And we get to LA on Friday afternoon. And traffic was crazy, and I remember we had a red Dodge Charger, and we're trying to get to Chino Hills, California, and we couldn't get there. And we didn't have the navigation systems on our phone. So we're trying to navigate, and we get off on an exit, and it's the wrong exit. And I'm like, no, Carl, we got to move back over. We got to get back on the interstate. So he whips it back over there in Carl fashion, and we get going along, and next thing you know, we hear the siren. So we get pulled over, and the gentleman walks up to the car, and he's of foreign descent, and Carl starts pleading his case. You know, we're out here to buy horses, support the economy. The cop wouldn't buy an answer. So Carl fumbles around, and a few of you guys know what I'm talking about, trying to find his license. So he finally gives his license to the officer, and he's sitting there, and I could just see the steam starting to roll out from underneath that collar. So the cop walks up, and Carl tries to plead his case again, wasn't having it. So Carl looks at the gentleman and says, let me ask you a question. And he goes, yes. And Carl looked at him and said, are you legal to be here in my country? And I mean, my jaw dropped, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like, what'd you say? So the next thing I know, Carl's out on the hood of the car. And there's helicopters all over the place flying around, and I'm sitting there going, Carl, shut up, shut up. And I just knew we were going to be on the news. There's this gray-headed guy on the top of a red Charger, and a bald-headed guy with glasses over there freaking out. So about 5 minutes passes, Carl gets back in the car, and he looks at me and says, well, that escalated quick. Only Carl. So in that being said, there's one word that I can use to describe Carl for me, and that word was tenacious. Tenacious has the definition of being not readily relinquished a position, determined, tough, and unswerving. And if those words did not describe Carl, I don't know what words did. The wear and tear on this saddle, these boots, and this spur represents a lifetime of work, was his passion. And everybody in this room was affected by it at one time or not. I wanted to use these as a memento. It wasn't about the polish and the silver on the saddles. It was about the work and the work that Carl and Trish did that touched an industry. They single-handedly helped with the modern day horse. From the hunt seat to the Western pleasure, they built a legacy together. Carl would go and find him, and he'd come home and hand him to her and say, get on him. Reluctantly, she would. Maybe it feel good, maybe it wouldn't. But make no mistake, it was going to work.
Sometime we needed that 9-year-old little boy that he bought him from.
That's right. That's exactly right. Carl was not one to sit around and watch for things to happen. He was a man to make things happen. And when he set his sights on something, you were not going to change his mind. And, you know, that was part of Carl. And no was never an option. One of his greatest gifts was his eye to pick out animals. Whether it be yearlings running out in the field trying to kick each other, an aged horse that maybe hadn't reached its full potential. I get to witness him, along with several others, do that many times. And I was always in awe of his ability to do that. When I first met Carl, it was 1997. I had just moved to Greensboro and was working for a well-established horseman. And
what was his name?
His name was Alex Ross. And I was 22 or 23 years old at the time. And I tell everybody my ambition far exceeded my talent. I hadn't come into my own, but I worked. And I'll never forget, we were at Conyers, Georgia, and he came up and gave me a word of encouragement. And that lit a fire under me that continued on. And I was lucky to have horses that, gave me my turn. Everybody gets their turn. And I was lucky that mine came early on. But Alex always gave me the encouragement to go on. But when Carl gave me that encouragement, it lit a fire under me. And I never forgot that. One of his proudest moments was last year when he got into the Hall of Fame. And the people that worked around to make that happen, I want you to know, maybe he didn't tell you, but I sure heard all about it. And I was as excited as I've ever heard that man the night that he got that done. And I want to thank you guys and ladies and everybody that was involved with that, because he didn't think he was going to get that done. And he was able to get that done. And what a blessing that was from the good Lord that we were able to make that happen. Not we, y'all. And you know who you are. I remember in giving several young girls their chance, and he pushed them to the brink. But he extracted that out of them, and they're still going today. And every time they achieve good things, I remember the pride that he had. He might not always tell you that, but believe me, he felt it. I was fortunate. I got to go with him a lot, and there's a few other guys that did too. But the lessons that I learned from that man on going out and looking for horses, studying conformation, will be unmatched. Now, we all have to find a way to go on, and we will. But we'll remember him every step of the way. Whether it was world championships or winning your first big win, it didn't matter. As long as you were giving him your personal best, that's all he asked. And I think we can thank him for that. If Carl didn't call you a dumbass at least once, he didn't waste his time with you. And each and every one of you know what I'm talking about. But it was that moment when you made a decision whether you were going to press on and get better or be mediocre. Carl could not stand mediocrity. It wasn't in his nature. It never was. I sat and I watched these slides today, and the lifetime of work that he and Trish and the horses that came through and the people, that's a testament in itself. And you all should be proud of that he let you in. I want to thank Trish for sharing him with all of us. Woo! Because he was with all of us probably more than he was with her.
Thank you, guys. No.
Carl was proud of the animals that he picked. The mare and the stud power. These irons are hot, machine made. They were game changers. And we all got to be a part of that and witness that. We've got to ride them. And what a testimony that was to his ability to find an animal. I've seen him look at babies and him watch them and look at me and tell me. And I'm like, I'm standing here with you. How could you possibly know? But he knew. With conviction. He knew. What Carl was the most proud of was the youngsters, horses and kids, that he made up. And to see them go on and have productive lives in the industry. Horses that went on and had further careers. Young trainers that went on and had further careers. That was probably one of his proudest moments. And I'm proud to stand here and share this. It was an honor for Trish to ask me to do this. I was lucky enough I got to go with Carl on his last trip. And I'll never feel worthy, but I'm so thankful that he wanted to go with me. And I get to treasure that for the rest of my life. The buckles are going to tarnish, the spurs will rust, and the saddles will collect dust. But the friendships they made will live on in his memory. Carl Yamber was my friend, and I'm proud of it. Thank you.
Good job, John.
Good job, Shane.